just joining us on Facebook Live, I'm Lauren Van Hemert from RDU on Stage, and Juan is back. He started this about a month ago, and he's back to continue the job. He'll be your moderator tonight, and I'm going to pass it to Juan and let you introduce. Always, if you have any questions or comments for the panel, just type them in the Facebook chat and I will get them to Juan and everyone. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Juan, for the reins.
No problem. Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everyone out there that's watching. Thank you guys for joining another episode of Torn. I think, am I hearing an echo of me? Yes, I am. I can't tell where. Hello? Yep, I think it was you, Patrick. No, it's not you. I'm not sure. It might be you, Mona. Let me see. Testing 1, 2. Nope. Everybody mute. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, it was you, Chris. Anyway, we move on. But welcome to another episode of Torn. Just to clarify something from a few weeks ago, what Torn stands for Theater on Racist Negativity, but what it's about is racist negativity, and it's just told from a point of view of theater people. It deals with racist negativity all over, not just in the theater, and we don't claim to come up with answers. This has been happening for over 400 years. We can't solve it. But in order to start, we have to open up a dialogue. And if we can't talk, then we can't even begin to start to have solutions. So that's what we do. And one of my philosophies is before I can change the world, I have to change my circle. And in order to change my circle, I have to bring them into my world. So that is what this platform is for. So I'm going to ask each of you, and I will call on you. I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to tell me your nationality and what you do in theater. So I am going to start with Mr. Patrick Torres.
Hi, thanks for having me, Juan. I'm Patrick Torres. I'm the artistic director at Raleigh Little Theater. I am a mixed race kid from Texas, but I consider myself Latinx of Mexican descent.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go to Christopher Bailey.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Bailey. I am from Raleigh, North Carolina, originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I actually run a company called Be Creative Enterprises, whereas we do stage productions. We also do film, primarily film and promo videos. And thank you, Juan, for having me on call.
Chris?
And I'm of African-American descent.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let me ask again. Theater people, boy, y'all gonna just go out there. Okay, again, your name, your nationality, and what you do in theater. Okay, Jamana, please.
I had to unmute myself. So I'm Germana Sharp. I am of African American descent, specifically Gullah Geechee, and and I'm a vocalist and actress.
You, Miss Gullah.
You welcome.
All right, all right. Mr. Jerome Davis.
Hey, Juan. I'm Jerome Davis. I'm American. Is my nationality, and I act, I direct, and so I'm the artistic director of Burning Coal.
Thank you, sir. Again, just so everyone remembers your name, your nationality, and what you do in theater. All right, Rimsha?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rimsha. I'm a first generation American Indian. My parents immigrated here from India, but I was born here, so I'm first generation. I am an actor in the area, and I'm also a playwright. I run a pretty new playwriting company called the Ink Project that aims to empower playwrights who wish to kind of vocalize narratives about underrepresented and marginalized groups.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, Darby.
I'm Darby. I am American, specifically from South Carolina, for reference. I am a student who just graduated from NC State, and I do lighting, projections, and stage management.
Thank you. Now, the first show, I asked the same question, and pretty much the responses were the exact same. Wasn't a positive or a negative, but in the first group, there was only one person who was actually indigenous of this land, and that was Kaylee Morrison. And this group did the exact same thing. There were only two people up here that said American. Everyone else either put something in front of or behind the American, except for Darby and Jerome. But everyone else here was born here, correct? Nodding. Everyone else here was born. So you are American, correct?
Yes.
So you could have just said American and that been it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is part of this discussion and the reason why we're having this discussion. I think personally, oh, you know what? Something I didn't do the last time. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Juan. I am old and I identify as Black, old school. And I am an actor and sound designer. And yeah. So I think there are a lot of things that we have been conditioned to think of ourselves, and that's everyone that's on this panel. And whether it's right or wrong, it's just the way we've been conditioned. And now we're trying to change it. And we want to place blames back and forth, but we've all been conditioned that way. So there's a certain level of responsibility that we all have to take in order to help make that change. As I said, you know, I heard African American, I heard mixed, you know, races. I heard first American something, but then I only heard two people just say American and they were done. Let me ask this, and some of these questions I asked in the very first show, and I have a different set of panels, so I want to ask these same questions over again. We all know what's going on. Well, you know what? Let me ask this. This I didn't ask the first set. I want to ask you guys, since the George Floyd incident and what's going on now, do you think we've made any progress? And I want to start with you, Jerome Davis.
The short answer is yes. Sometimes I wish it weren't like this, one, but sometimes it takes, you know, earth-shaking events to get people to wake up, you know, and I feel like it has caused people to wake up.
Okay. Christopher, do you think we made progress?
I would say yes. I would say yes, but then I'm very careful with that yes. And the reason why I say that is because I've heard a lot of people say that this time it feels different. It feels totally different than the last events that we've had. I know when Trayvon Martin happened, and I remember how there was such an uproar during that time period, and then it kind of tailored off, and then the next incident happened. Then you start seeing all these different events happening again and again. But I think, and I think I was having this conversation earlier, I think the reason why it's different is because we're being forced to have to pay attention to it. With the pandemic and everything, it's extremely difficult now to go back to business as usual, because we have to see it. You know, we're standing in our homes. You know, we're no longer going to the mall and to the movies and hanging out with our friends and different things like that, kind of giving us a way to escape it. You know, we're seeing it on the news constantly because everybody's on their social media now. So we're seeing it all the time. It's in our face. And so, yes, it's different because now you have no escape. And then I think this moment is demanding an answer from you. And the answer is, do you see it or are you ignoring it? And you have to give an answer because your silence is still an answer. So I think, yeah, I think it's different.
Okay. To bring it to theater, Patrick, I've heard it being said that these changes that we're trying to make, like with this show and things, they may last 1 or 2 seasons in theater, but then they go back to the way they were. Have you seen that before? And do you think that that's something that can change?
Yeah, I think that's definitely happened in the past, you know, where we get really focused on injustice, things that are happening. And as theater makers, I do think we have, for the most part, I think we have good intentions to respond to that and to work on that. And then I think we fall back into patterns that exist, that are part of systemic racism, but that are part of things that, you know, I think that we call it different names. We call it tradition. We call it the way things work. We call it fundraising. We call, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of names for the old patterns that we fall into because the system is built in a very rigid way. So yeah, I think that we've done it before. I feel really hopeful that this time will be different. Now I think that what we have to accept and really, and I'm not talking about the general we, I'm talking about those of us who are leaders in organizations. I think the thing that we have to embrace, a better way to say it, is that to do this right and to make it sustainable and to continue it is going to be a constant state of reassessment all the time. We're going to constantly have to reassess our values and what we're aiming for, and we're going to have to make those really clear in order for it to last. But the reason I'm hopeful that this time, and I'm speaking to myself too, that I'm hopeful that this time it's going to last is because I think, like Chris was saying, we've had to see it, we've had to recognize it, we've read the letters, you know what I mean? Like we've heard the theater community crying about how, you know, theater's racist and Broadway's racist and all that stuff. And I think it's become personal. And I think when something starts in a personal place, it helps to sustain the effort that it takes to change an institution. So I'm really hopeful. I'm really hopeful this time.
Okay. Going out of theater back into the streets. This is going to be a question for everyone. It's a previous question. When, and so everyone prepare your answers. When did you realize that you were different than someone else? Like, when did you realize that you were white and someone else was black? When did you realize you were black and someone else was white? When did you realize that you were Latinx and someone else was something else? You know, and were you 3, 4, 5? What was that experience like for you? I'm going to start with you, Rimsha.
I think very, very early on in my childhood. I was born in New Jersey. I lived there for 10 years before I moved to North Carolina. And the Indian population in New Jersey is pretty big. And so the people that my family associated with, you know, they looked like us, but in terms of they had similar values, they spoke the same language, and going to our mosque and stuff. It kind of hit me when I was pretty young and my skin color started getting compared to my sisters and other cousins because I was darker. And so my grandmother would make comments, and this is really common in South Asian cultures where dark skin is considered less beautiful or appealing. And so they advertise this as fairness cream, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the first time I was like, okay, that's strange. That's very, very weird. And then when I was in, like, I think this was first grade, we had to like draw little images of ourselves, and they gave us construction paper to kind of base that on. And so they would give us construction paper based on our skin tone. And I remember I got a brown paper and I begged my teacher. I was like, no, please give me the white one, just because that's how that mentality was kind of engraved in my head as like, I mean, at 7 years old. And she refused. I'm so glad she did. And I think the first time I kind of realized, like, okay, this is how I look different. And then after 9/11 hit, it started becoming more about the look, but more about what my family's like religious views were, because we're Muslim. And so growing up in New Jersey, where we were very close to the incident, we lived in a majority neighborhood where it was like Indian Hindu, and we were the only Indian Muslim family. And immediately after 9/11 happened, there was a very, palpable change in kind of way we were viewed and affected. So honestly, before the age of 10, I kind of saw myself as an other or an outsider.
Okay. Darby?
The first time that I can remember is when, also I apologize, my cat is in here and she wants to make an appearance. The first time I can remember was when I was in first grade, and I was in a group of 3 girls. We were best friends, and 2 of them were Black. And I don't even remember who it was that said something, but all of a sudden, when they started having to move away, or we started to end up in different schools because we were sorted in different schools based on where we lived or whatever, I started to realize that I was around people that looked like me, a lot of people that looked like me. And the first time that I really started to understand what my privilege was when I moved out of my small town that I grew up in, and I went to high school in Durham. And some of my friends were telling me about the experiences that they had, and I remember arguing with them and making arguments that I wholeheartedly disagree with now. But those people had the patience that they didn't need to have and that I didn't deserve, but they sat down and they explained to me why I was wrong and why my opinions were dangerous and why my perspective was dangerous. And they really helped me a lot more than they needed to. But I definitely walk with those stories like in my brain, very, very present, especially right now.
Okay, thank you. Jemana?
Okay, I was making sure I was off mute. So growing up in Pittsburgh, like I never really had an experience, and my family has always been very real with me when it came to different cultures and different races and who I am, and learning to learning to love someone or respect people based on who they are, not their color. So I've been very, I had tons of different friends from different backgrounds, and I was very blessed to learn that lesson early on. But when I moved to North Carolina, I started fourth grade in and we were all sitting next to each other, and a parent actually came in, one of the parents of a white student, and she came in and she saw that her daughter was sitting in between me, a black student, and another black student. So she took the teacher out and spoke to her privately. The teacher came back in and moved that student to sit next to another white student. Come to find out, that parent didn't want their child sitting next to black kids. So the teacher, she was very sensitive and she spoke within our level. Only the level of a fourth grader could understand about hate, racism, and why this was happening. And that was the first time I've experienced that. And that incident, that situation stuck with me forever. It seemed, I can remember it vividly like it was yesterday. But yeah, that was the first time I've ever experienced something like that. Ever since then, there really hasn't been too much. Of course, growing up, you are introduced to the world, and thank God for my dad, because he prepared me the best way he could for it. And you see different situations, but that was the first time I've ever experienced that at such a young age. So yeah.
Okay. Jerry, and while you're doing it, I need to turn on some light. Jamon, I need my light. Go ahead, Jerry, talk. I'm turning on the light.
Well, I was kind of late to the table because I grew up in a very rural area, and like the road that we lived on was a old dirt road, with a dead end road, and there were maybe 11 families that lived on this maybe 3/4 stretch of road, and a couple of trailers, and there were 3 houses that black families lived in along that road out of the 11 or 12 that were there, and so it didn't seem unusual to me. I will also note, for what it's worth, that they were the ones that would wave at us as we drove by. The others didn't really seem particularly interested in waving, but I do remember once in elementary school, there was a girl, I forget her first name, but her last name was Friedman. And I remember one day around the Christmas holidays, somebody asked her, "What are those strange candles in your window?" I don't know how they even knew where she lived, but she had a menorah in her window, and she was Jewish, and she explained to everybody what it what the menorah meant, what it signified, and that was the first time I had any concept that everyone wasn't exactly like me, really, I guess.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, I'm going to call on you because I'm not sure what happened to Patrick. But go ahead, Chris.
All right. Well, I think my mother, so originally I'm from Kentucky, so my mother kind of did a very good job in terms of protecting us from a lot of stuff, right? But when I was in grade school, one of my best friends was white. Name was Philip, and we were, I want to say that was third grade, maybe third or fourth grade, maybe, and we were like the best friends. And when we would go out on the playground, we didn't see any color. We didn't see anything different. We was just 2 kids out playing on the playground. But other kids, and sometimes even teachers, would kind of show that there was a difference. And I never forget a time that we was roughhousing and playing on the playground, and Philip got hurt. While we were playing, I was blamed for it, as if I had literally hit him, physically hit him, trying to hurt him. And, of course, we're trying to explain, we was playing, we was playing Monsters or whatever the game was we were playing. But I remember how we got sent to, we got sent to the principal's office, but I had to remain in the principal's office. And then, of course, he was released. And then his mother came. And, of course, his mother knew my mother because, again, we were friends. And so, but my mother and I were called into the office in terms, and I was the one that was put in trouble because they, assumed that I had physically did this on purpose to hurt him. So, and that was like the first time that I experienced a difference because we both were playing, we both were throwing each other around the playground. And that's when I realized that. But then after the fact, coming up in Kentucky, you see a lot, as I got older and began to work. They used to have KKK rallies in the downtown area, right across the street from the courthouse building. And, you would just kind of see the difference. And then you would see the sheriffs and different individuals would actually be over there protecting them as they're having their rally and whatnot. And these were the same sheriffs that you would come in contact with when you go into work every day. And how they would look at you and interact with you would just be totally different. So it was just interesting, and, being a Black man and, I've been stopped several times, especially in Kentucky. Had a gun drawn out on me when I was in Kentucky. I was about 16 years old. The officer asked me to get my wallet. And of course, that time, about 16 years old, you kind of wear your shorts under your pants, because, you play basketball or whatever, of course, whatever you may be doing. And so I never forget. And that's the day that I really changed my whole perspective, because that could have been my last day. He asked me to get out of the car, and he had assumed that I was driving recklessly on the road, and apparently there was another car that supposedly looked like mine that was weaving in and out of traffic. And he asked me to go get my wallet. And so, I'm a kid, I ain't thinking, I'm reaching down to go get my wallet. And he screams out, slowly. By the time I look up, I got a gun pointing in my face, and I'm like, yo, my wallet is in my shorts, I'm like scared half to death. So that's when I really found out that there was a difference. That moment changed my life.
Thank you. Okay. And Patrick.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry about that. Something weird happened with my computer. I think the very first time I remember, I was in kindergarten and living in Texas, growing up in Texas, in West Texas, close-ish to the border. I was called a racial slur, and I didn't know what it meant. So I went home and asked my mom and dad. And so it was the first time that I really realized that I was different. And, there's just been a ton of stuff. And I think as just speaking a little bit to the experience of mixed race kids, it's tricky because you also there's just a place where you feel like an in-between kind of person that's really hurtful as well. I think probably if I had to be super honest, the way that there's been a lot of racism that I've experienced in my life. Probably most people would define it as more micro, which I guess is fair. But probably the most consistent way that I've experienced feeling different or whatever is people trying to erase my color because I am mixed race, which is really it makes me really angry, because it tries to remove my father. I in elementary school, I was called coconut a lot, brown on the outside and white on the inside. And people, I think trying to place me like as if it was a gift into the white dominant culture. Like, oh, you're not really Latin, you're not really Mexican, it's cool, you're white. Like that kind of stuff has happened consistently throughout my life. And all of that's, I guess the difference in mixed race, like feeling different, like you don't really feel like you belong anywhere. Well, people make you feel like you don't really belong anywhere. Like you can't be fully Latin and you can't be fully white, so that's just kind of been my experience.
Okay. Now, this next question, and I'm not going to let y'all go on with this because we'll be here for the rest of the night. So I just want a one-word answer. I know that's going to be hard for some of you, but I want a one-word answer. Okay, Jamon?
You know what? I was about to put something up, but I'm going to just put my hand up top to the hand.
Okay, just one word. And I'm going to call on you to answer, each of you to answer just one word. Is there white privilege in theater? One word answer. Darby.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Germana.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Rimsha.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about this. This was something Lauren wanted to speak about, and she was asked not to speak about it. But guess what? I'm gonna speak about it anyway. Colorblind and color conscious. Right. Let's speak about that in theater. Colorblind and color conscious. Now, Patrick, what do those two mean to you?
Well, colorblind means to me that you're erasing someone's identity, which is what I was just talking about. Like I've experienced that throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like people, you don't really, I think people think, and I, well, anyway, people think they get to say like that they get to define who you are and how you should identify, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think colorblind reinforces that. I think it's good intentions, and when it first became part of the popular narrative in theater, I believe it was good intention. It was about giving access to roles and parts that weren't normally reserved for white people. But I think we evolve and we grow and we learn and we reassess. And I think colorblind isn't an appropriate way to talk about it anymore. I do like color conscious because I like that it's active. That means that you've had to consider what's going to happen, right? Like if I cast, a Middle Eastern person in a Jewish role, I need to have thought about that and kind of what that means and what, because semiotics are a real thing, right? Like symbolism is a real thing. And like when you think about response and reception theory, the audience is going to read text, language into that choice. And you just have to have thought about that. I'm not saying I support it. I think we should do it. I think we should do more of it. But it's going to be present. But I like color conscious because it indicates thought. I also, as I enjoy the word, I like saying colorful. Like just let's be colorful. But the conscious part of it I like because it connotes action.
Okay, Jerry, I would like for you to elaborate on that. And one of the reasons why is because, personally speaking, you have cast me in some roles that I would never volunteer for, that I've had to learn languages and accents that when you put me in them, I'm like, oh God, why did he do that? I don't speak that language. I barely speak English. And you put me in stuff where you actually have had the playwright to change some of the language because it said a fair-skinned, pale-faced white man, and there's nothing about that here. So if you would speak on that as well.
Well, I'm not sure what to say beyond what Patrick said. I think the most, I think the thing that we're working toward ultimately is the idea that what a person is on the inside is the most important thing. And so if there's an aspect of you, Juan, that I think is, pick a character, that I think you would bring out. I think there's a legitimate reason to cast you in that part, and so I don't know what else to say beyond really what Patrick said, but I do think that ultimately what is inside a person is what those characteristics are the ones that that I want as a director, that I want to communicate to an audience. When I'm just going to pick a random example, when we watch The Wizard of Oz, we're not, I hope we're not thinking about a farm in Kansas, I hope we're thinking about broader issues than that. And so I think when The Wiz is created, the Wiz is essentially telling the same story. I think, and I think that's legitimate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay, thank you. Remsha, do you shy away from auditioning for roles because of your nationality?
Do I shy away from auditioning for, sorry, just clarification, for roles that I believe were probably intentionally written or thought about for someone else, or like
just roles in general? Like maybe there's something you just always wanted to do, but do you think sometimes I can't do that because it's not for someone of my nationality?
Yeah, that thought has come actually. I wasn't ever, when I first got into theater, I never really had that thought at all. I don't know, just never really crossed my mind. I always thought that it was talent that mattered, and I felt like I brought X amount of talent to X role, so on and so forth. I think in the in the triangle and like the type of stories and narratives that are being shown, there is that thought that crosses my mind that maybe they're trying to go this way. I've never actually had a conversation about it, so this is an educational moment for me where conversation with the director or something about it and be like, hey, what are you looking for, et cetera, et cetera. But that thought has absolutely crossed my mind. Yeah, because there's not that many Indian Pakistani actors in this area, so it's hard. It's hard. I can just I don't know what the precedent is here.
Okay. And I wasn't necessarily trying to put in a thought in your head.
Yeah.
But it's crossed my mind some too.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, did you want to say something? Oh, okay, no. It's crossed my mind too. Like I said, Jerry has put me in some stuff that I probably would have never auditioned for before. And then I'm like, well, why couldn't I have auditioned for that? Right. And I want to go to crew stuff. And of course, Darby is, as a lighting person, she's sitting over there with the perfect light on her right now. Like, Jemana, we got to work on that. We got to figure out how she got that window. You know what I'm saying? As a sound person, Darby, and a crew person, do you see a lot of diversity in crews?
No.
Why do you think that is?
I think there are a lot of steps to that problem. I'm in the year of the stage manager group, and we had a conversation about specifically stage management and why I can count the number of Black stage managers that I know on one hand and be confident that I'm not missing anybody. And a lot of it is opportunity. A lot of it is, I mean, even just awareness that the position is an option. A lot of it is opportunity to participate in theater. A lot of it is opportunity to get a 4-year education in theater, which seems to be required at least. A lot of it is the opportunity to go get another degree in addition to that. And there's another part of it that's also outreach, because I don't think that the interest isn't there. I think that the relationships aren't there. And that's the biggest, it's building a pipeline of people that gets more diversity in these positions.
Chris, let me ask you a question. You mentioned earlier you did a quick little plug for yourself, which no tea, no shade, but you had to more or less go outside of theater to do your plug to do your crew stuff outside of acting. Why did you do it that way, or do you think you had to do it that way?
Kind of what Darby said, and I guess the best way to put that would be in a sports analogy. If you think about football and then you think about quarterbacks and how many Black quarterbacks you see in the NFL, right? And it's not that Blacks can't play quarterback. It's probably just like the opportunities aren't there. Well, they're changing, of course, but the stereotype was only quarterbacks were this particular person, this particular athletic build, this was their whatever, right? And then for more other positions where your running back and your wide receivers, they predominantly were Black, right? So when you think of like your stage managers, because like Darby, I probably can count on maybe one hand how many stage managers I've seen or worked with that were of African American descent. But if I look down the production crew of workers, the ones that were moving stuff or things of that nature, I would see a few more of us there than I would running the lights, running the sound, running stage management, things of that nature. So for me, I don't think it was because the opportunities weren't there. I think it was more so because I didn't see it. I just decided, okay, I'm just going to create it myself, or try and do something else myself. And I think because you don't see it, you don't really know the direction to actually go and pursue it. You just kind of say, well, okay, well maybe I ain't gonna do that. So I just act. I just be on stage, or whatever, or I just be a stage hand or whatever.
This is for everyone except for the artistic directors. This is a simple yes or no. With the conversation that you've had so far, do you think that there is a case to be made that maybe some of the people in theater could go to the artistic directors and feel comfortable enough to talk to them about learning other stuff and doing more stuff in the theater? Do you guys think that?
Yes.
Okay.
And can I, when everybody
Yes.
answers, can I
Yes, go ahead.
elaborate on your previous question?
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So when everybody answers, Juan's question, I'll elaborate on the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
but
Go
go
ahead
ahead.
now.
Okay. So as far as seeing people of color or Black people in those the crew roles, I always go back to Sonoris Theater before it became Pure Life. I got my first directing and stage management opportunity there because they gave the opportunity for people who have never done that before to learn on an actual and do it on an actual show. If theaters did that more, that would open up a lot of doors because I love production just as much as I love acting and entertaining. I want to learn everything and I want people to know that I can do it all. Like I'm just that type of person. I can do it all. Okay, I can sing, I can act, and I can also control. I can control the panels. And I'm willing to learn it. I think that stuff is very interesting. It's interesting to me anyway. But when I did it for Sonoris Road Theater, they put the opportunity out there that, hey, we're looking for whoever wants to be a stage manager. You don't have to have any experience. We'll teach you. This isn't a high pressure production. So you're gonna take it step by step. And same thing with the directing. I directed my first stage production because they presented that opportunity for me. And a lot of times this is not, I'm not trying to say anything negative or I'm not trying to say anything bad, but a lot of times some people are so concerned with being seen and being on stage and being the one receiving all of the attention that they kind of scoff at the other opportunities that they can definitely and need to be in as a Black person behind the scenes. I think it's very important that you have people of color, people who look like me, people who look like you, Juan, people who look like you, Chris, behind the scenes just as much as they're on the stage. Mm-hmm. Because you are more comfortable, you are more confident in knowing that we can take over the space on any level. So yeah, and with that being, I think that if the opportunity arise where it wouldn't have to be a huge production, but it would just be like one of those little one-off shows, or hey, we're doing 3 shows a night. We're looking for local playwrights and people who are trying to, step into this role. Come on out and do this with us. That would definitely open up, the opportunity for people, Black people, to come and say, hey, I think I want to try this because I've always been interested.
To add to what you're saying too, I think it comes with a confidence also of actually wanting to. Sometimes, as actors, you can get stuck in the mode of I'm just an actor, and you're so good at it. People, you get pats on the back and everybody talk about how amazing you are, whatever. You kind of get stuck in that mode of, okay, I'm just an actor and I don't see myself as being a director. And then, of course, when you're not approached with the opportunity, as you mentioned, then you don't think that you can direct. You don't think that you could produce. You don't think that you can run the sound or run the audio because all your accolades come from just being on stage. So I think it's a conversation, with this movement that we're in, it's now about being able to open up your mouth and speak. And then the other side being willing to listen to you versus just seeing you for an artist or seeing you just for what we can have you do at this moment.
Okay. And Darby and Rimsha, you guys were in agreement about being able to talk to the artistic directors about possibly wanting to learn something else.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you guys would be more comfortable with trying to have that conversation with them?
Yeah.
Darby, you're already doing stuff on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Chris, I thought you had to go. You ain't going nowhere yet. Chris done got interested in the conversation, y'all. So this is something I want to say. So guys, indulge me for a few minutes, if you will. I don't know where Jamana? Phone, it must have died. Okay. Give me a few minutes on this one, and we're going to talk about this one. This is microaggression. So we did our first show, and there was a comment that was made that the show was all over the place. And it goes back to the comment that I made at the top of the show. It was made directly to me. That was it about, is the show about police brutality? Is the show about theater? Am I chastising the theaters for the comments that they made, about the George Floyd incident, about Black Lives Matter? And it got to me. And some of my friends said, well, you can't say anything, or don't say anything to that person because you might hurt that person's feelings. And I immediately said, you're right. And then I thought about it and I was like, but what about my feelings? And that goes back to us being programmed that for so long that, it's like, well, you're Black, your feelings don't matter. You can't hurt a white person's feelings. You're not allowed to. So that day went on, and then a message was sent to Lauren on Instagram that said that the first show, it was okay, but she didn't have a professional up there. She didn't have a professional on the show to talk about being Black and how it is to deal with racism. Oh, okay. So I guess I don't have a degree, and I'm not a white person with a degree from Harvard, so I don't know what it's like to be Black and know what it's like to have somebody be racist towards me. And I had to really stop and think about that for a minute. And what I realized, and Chris probably can attest to this, it's happened for centuries to us. When this person didn't come to me, they went to Lauren. When they can't get to me, they find a white person that's over me, and they go to them and they say something that's negative. So that white person will come shut me down. That's the way they do it. But they had the wrong person with Lauren because the show is still going on. I set all that up to talk about microaggression in theater. I'm really going to start this one with actors and light person. And I'm pointing this way because that's what Darby is in relation to me. So let me start with Chris. Have you experienced anything of that nature in theater?
Now, so just so I'm clear, when you say experience microaggression, explain. So I'm assuming the experience that you just mentioned, that's pretty much what you're saying. Have I experienced that?
Something of that nature, yeah. Where it's not blatant, right out racism, hardcore, but it's that underlying, like, yeah, you know what? You're used to doing that, and you did that. And it can also be sexism as well. Just like, yeah, I can tell what you did.
I'm just gonna be 100% honest. I can say no. I don't think that I have had that happen. But then you also got to know my personality too, and that is of a nature that I don't particularly pay attention to much like that unless it like really sticks out and hits me. So have I had somebody, hear me say something or talk about something that they want to kind of go around about and shut me down with that? I have to say no. As of yet, I haven't had that experience. I have seen it happen, but in terms of happening to me, no, I have not as of yet had that kind of experience.
Okay. Darby?
From the sexism perspective, one of the ones that I always go back to is having men pick things up out of my hands when I'm carrying them. And it hasn't happened once or twice, it's happened a lot. And they will pick things out of my hands because they don't think I should be carrying them, because, oh, well, women shouldn't have to carry these things, or because they assume that I don't know what to do with them because I am a woman. And I've had speakers taken out of my hands, I've had lights taken out of my hands, I've had tech tables taken out of my hands. And it happens more often than I thought it would. And I'm still always a little surprised and disappointed when it happens.
Okay. Rimsha, either or, racism or sexism?
Kind of going back to what Christopher was saying, I try to tune out. I'm not necessarily, I hate the word tune out, but I try to not try to give it any extra attention or have a hypersensitivity of it when I'm working. I've had microaggressional comments made or disagreements with directors about characters that I've played or that I was playing that, you know, for instance, if I was playing someone from another ethnic descent or something like that, I've had disagreements with directors about the approach, the artistic approach on how to go about those characters in a microaggressional way. So it hasn't been directed towards me, but it's been kind of, well, you might get this because, you know, it's similar, or well, we see it as this, so can you play it like that? I've had that experience happen pretty often. So it's very indirect in that way. Like it wasn't about me in particular, but about like an assumption, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Generalization. Yeah.
Jamana,
I haven't.
okay. Were you able to hear?
No, sorry. Can you repeat that?
Okay, so
Repeat the
we're
question.
talking about microaggression in theater. You know, where just someone has said or done, you know, somebody coming trying to tell you how to play a Black person, or
Right.
you know, how to some of that. You know, just microaggression. Do you understand what
Yeah.
microaggression is?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had experience with that probably once or twice. Actually, yeah, like twice. And most recently, one of the shows I ended up leaving. You know, about that. We're not gonna get too far into that, but during that time of rehearsal, the director thought that because, you know, she had family who you know, had a little bit of Black influence, we'll say that, that she knew everything about how I was supposed to be playing a character or how I should approach playing the character. It's very uncomfortable because it's very uncomfortable, and it's very offensive because you gave me this role because you knew in your mind somewhere that I could bring something different to the role. You were conscious of me being Black when you gave me the role and when I auditioned. Therefore, I would think that you would know that you don't need to instruct me on how to be Black. But yeah, that is very, it's kind of like, it's very belittling too. It's kind of like you don't respect me enough, or you felt the need to cast me in this role because you wanted to show me that you could relate to me being black and how I should be black. Like it's kind of like, what are you saying? Why? If you gave me this role to put my own little spin on it and to, diversify your theater, then why are you trying to give me classes on how to be black, and how to play the character when it comes to being black? So yeah, I've had that plenty of times, and both times it was white women. So yeah, that's a little interesting.
Okay. And for those of you watching, there are different types of microaggression.
Yeah.
And you just heard more than one. To our two artistic directors, which I really didn't want to sing you guys out as artistic directors, but I got two of you here. Jerry, do you think, well, that's not really how I should ask it.
I'm
Do you think
something about microaggression too? Could I talk about that
Sure.
one? And stop me if this is off topic too much, but I have experienced it a lot over the last 23 years from an economic position. We've my wife and I started the theater with our own money, basically, and we got a lot of support in the community that we, I don't think we would have got it if we had been African American or Latino or whatever. So I do recognize that was the case, but there's also this issue of how much support you get, and so when you go to somebody and ask them to be on your board of directors, for instance, somebody who's at that kind of level, economic level in the community that could really have an impact on the finances of the theater, the answer is always no. And it starts with who else is on your board, right? And so this is all about it feels to me like keeping you in your place, right? There are the big theaters, and then there's you guys, and you guys are going to stay in your place, and that does feel like a microaggression to me. I know it probably pales in comparison to some of the things that you're talking about, but I'll just give you one example. When we were working on getting the Murphy School renovated, there was one person who was very helpful to us in many ways, and but one night near the end of it, she called my wife out of the blue. It was on Sunday night, and she was a little more than a little tipsy, and the message she called to deliver was, you guys are not, this is not happening because of you. It's happening in spite of you, right? So in other words, we rich people are the ones that are making this happen, and you guys should be grateful for that. And that kind of thing happens, I won't say on a daily basis, but certainly a month doesn't go by that I don't experience some level of that. Just stay in your place and work at the level you're supposed to, and don't try to do anything beyond that.
Wow. Okay. Patrick, any words?
Well, about microaggression?
Yeah.
Or just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I've seen it happen. It exists. I was just like, I mean, first of all, I have to say this so that it just gets out of my brain, because otherwise it won't. But like this whole all these Zoom meetings and these Zoom panels, like I think I've realized that I have a really mean face when I'm thinking about something really hard, and it makes me sad. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's part of maybe more people would talk if I didn't have a mean face. It's like staring at your own face is kind of crazy. But yeah, no, microaggressions happen, all the time, and I think that they're built into the systems that we work in, for sure. Like people don't even realize they're doing it. To be the first artistic leader of color at an institution that was founded in 1936, there's just things that happen. I've had someone express shock that I was the artistic director because they thought that I was that I worked in a scene shop. I mean, like, it's just like things that have happened. And then that relationship, we talked about it though, and it got better, you know? So I just think that there are things that exist because of the way that things have been built and the assumptions that are made. Now, to talk a little bit about what Germana's talking about in folks like microaggression in rehearsal rooms, of course that's happened. I would be like probably foolish to assume that I've never made that mistake. But, you know, it's like also, I think that we're in this kind of, I think one of the opportunities of this moment we're in, as we're all learning more about anti-racism and that kind of work, like that to try to direct someone into like blackness, especially a black actor into blackness, is like, it's also making an assumption that there is a blackness thing, you know what I mean? That like, that is monolithic and not like individual, right? Like we wouldn't do that. Like, I think with an all white cast, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't,
Right.
we would talk about specific character and what that character is doing and the actions that character is taking. And we wouldn't even think about like saying, can you be more white about it? Do you know what I mean? Like, because characters are individuals and as unique and complex as the world is. So I think that that's a mistake that we have made in the theater a lot, and that I'm really hopeful that is like one small step that coming out of this we'll all be more aware of and not do anymore.
Do you guys think, all of you, do you guys think that that theaters should have a safe space for actors, crew to go to speak with someone for microaggression, or do you think that's you know, whining and you know, just being a baby? You know?
No, I think they should definitely have a safe space, like you said, for cast and crew to go and speak on microaggression, but anything that they feel they need to speak about when it comes to how they have been offended and they have feel that they were offended because of their color. You know, I think that a safe space is necessary, and knowing that you can go to someone who is unbiased and who is kind of like the mediator, you know, because I'm just thinking back in my school days when two people had a fight, they would go to the office, they would take these steps before suspension, and there would be a mediator to speak to both sides, right? So kind of like something like that, in order to understand why you feel this way, in order to explain and break down what this person meant when they said what they said, and how you felt when they said it. And I think a safe space is a great idea. I think having that person there is excellent, especially for people of color. To come and just be like, hey, I don't feel a part of the crew. I don't feel a part of the group. I feel like this and that. And these things have been happening, and I feel like I can't talk to the director, the stage manager. So here I am talking to you, and I think that would be that's definitely a great idea.
I
Chris?
completely. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, Risha, go ahead. Go ahead, Risha.
Go ahead.
I was like, yes, I agree. I want to emphasize that. So if I could like emphasize with like an exclamation mark, I absolutely would. That is so. Because I think it would add a token of accountability on behalf of all parties, and I don't think there's a system built in place like that. And I've only had experience in the area of acting, so this can, of course, go for all, sex within, making a show. So what the thing is like, if I had a complaint or if I had a negative experience, there isn't anyone, even if there isn't a negotiator at that moment, just even to have like some kind of follow-up survey or meeting or conversation, kind of like an exit meeting, what people do sometimes,
Right.
Being a job,
Right.
That to be like, okay, now the weight is off, the show is over. I can tell you all of this that I've experienced, and that how are we gonna, hold X, Y, and Z accountable? Well, are they not going to work with us anymore? Or, something like that. Is there going to be a mandated training, a diversity training involved for all parties before the show even begins, especially when there is a script that, you know, is more sensitive in certain areas, because it opens conversation of, you know, just of marginalized groups, for instance, like anything like that. I feel like that requires an extra amount of attention. So I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Totally agree with that. I'll put an exclamation point down on that as well. But no, I totally agree. And I think to go along with what had been said earlier, when you have a grievance or when you have an issue like that, who is the person that you normally, as an actor, who is the person that you would normally go to? Your director, right? Or, you know, the stage manager, and like that. And then you vent your frustrations, you vent your disappointments or whatever. Well, the stage manager can't do anything because they got to run the show. You know, the director can't really do anything because they got to direct you and 5-10 different other people. And they still have to manage all these relationships and keep the chemistry on set so that the show can be done, right? So I think it's an absolute need, because number one, it keeps, like she said, it keeps everybody accountable, especially the director or the stage manager, whoever is the one that is causing the issue. And then not only that, but then now your crew and the group they feel like they have a voice, and they feel like they are now going to be heard. And my complaint to you, whether we're talking about tickets or whether we're talking about seating or whether we're talking about, you know, how we're getting this show done, is now not just going to your ear and then to your collective group of individuals and talk about it, and then nothing gets done, and then I'm sitting there like the disgruntled actor in regards to what's taking place. So I did have this experience, now that I think about it, but I totally agree with it, and I think that it is definitely something that it needs to be implemented like immediately, and it's definitely past due, because I think a lot of times you have the theater companies or, you know, production companies, what have you. It's something that is discussed in the moment, and then once that moment passes, it doesn't really come up again until you have another moment.
Patrick?
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. I'm going to say two things. I'm going to try to be quick about it. Like, the Chicago Theater Standards, I don't know if people are familiar with those, but those were created based off of like sexual predatory behavior and sexual abuse in Chicago theaters. But there's some really good stuff in there. And one of the things that we've started to implement is a thing called the concern resolution path, so that people get it at the first rehearsal. And it's like, here's the ladder that you climb if you have a concern. Like, here's the director's email and phone number, here's the executive director's email and phone number, and here's somebody on the board's email and phone number, so that people just know that there's a pathway. So that's kind of the first thing. Like I've actually really found a lot of comfort in that, like letting people know, if your problem is with me, there's still these other folks that you can talk to. And I'm just going to be open about like that. I'm telling you to contact them if you have a problem with me. I want you to, you know. And then the other thing is, like, if there's any funders that are listening or watching this video or whatever, like, it'd be so great for somebody to fund like some real serious good training for arts nonprofits for leadership, like both like anti-racism, equity training, but also like, you know, like I got my degree, like I learned how to like create, I hope, some pretty compositions on stage, to understand how text works and to like work with actors. But man, there's been so many times where I wish that I had experience as a community organizer, or I had experience with conflict resolution or mediation, or, you know, I've had to learn how to do finance and stuff. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff that I never thought that I'd be doing. And so like, it'd be so great if somebody could like help fund like conflict resolution training for artistic leadership in a theater would be amazing. And it's something that like I would love the experience of that, because I think it'd be helpful in these situations.
Okay, I want to go back to something because it was a question that was asked. Tasha asked this question. So I want to go back to stage managing and directing. And I know what Jemana was talking about, at least I think I do. I know there was a somewhere, and it may have been Sonora's, where they were doing
Mhm.
like little 10-minute plays, and
Yes.
you come in, you direct like a
Yep.
10 minutes, and
Yeah.
you just did like maybe 5 or 10-minute plays, and a
Yep.
different director would do them. But is it possible to have classes? Because like I don't have any, like my degree is in music. I don't have any formal training. I'm a sound designer because my degree is in music, and I have computer experience. And I just put the two together and sat down with the program. And Jerry looked at me and said, "Do you know how to use this?" And I lied to him and said yes. And then I went home and got on YouTube and studied the hell out of QLab overnight, and went back and started doing stuff and got it right. And I became a sound designer, and a damn good one, if I say so myself. But not everyone has the 4-year degree, but that doesn't mean that they are not capable of doing it.
Yeah.
You know, do you guys think that maybe there should be an opportunity, and this is for the artistic directors as well, to have some training, like you guys have acting classes, some stage managing and directing, shadowing, and some opportunity to learn there. And let me start with the artistic directors. Jerry, let me start with you. Do you think that's a waste of time, or do you think that's
No,
something?
no, I don't think it's a waste of time. It's something that should be done and will be done.
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, what I'm learning in this project, I agree with Jerry totally. And one of the things that I'm learning right now, we offer directing classes almost every year that I teach, and then we offered a stage management class this spring that was well done. But I think that too often, and I'm just going to own this as a mistake that I've been making, is that I have. That these opportunities have existed, but I've waited for people to reach out to me to take advantage of them, and I haven't like sought out people to do it. And so, that's something that I'm convicted about, and I want to start doing a better job of.
I'm the same way, Patrick. You get so busy, and you feel like you're working 14-hour days, and the idea of one more thing just. But it's critical. It's absolutely critical. And I do want to say also, and Juan, I've said this to you before, and I know Patrick has too, that we are open to hearing from people. I can't speak for every single leader in the community, but I know him well enough to know that anybody that wants to reach out to me about working in any capacity, we'll put you with somebody and get it going.
Okay. The rest of the guys, Darby, what do you think about that? I think that's a good idea.
Yes, I think it's a very good idea. And I also think that it's something that we should be taking advantage of in programming right now.
Right.
In a time where we can't be on stage together, we can be having these Zoom calls and having conversations about what stage management means, about what design is. We can show shows that we've worked on. I know that I had a Zoom call last week where I was going through paperwork that I have and showing how the paperwork that I use works, and just creating those kind of community opportunities and reaching out to people right now and making them happen now, I think is a great way to commit to it and not have to wait for us to get back into spaces.
Right.
Okay. Jamona, what you think that's a
I definitely do think it's a great idea. I spent over 4 years in school for medical, like in the medical field. I ain't going back to school for stage for stage managing. I'm not doing it. Why? I'm not stepping on nobody's campus. I'm just not. I just cannot do it. Okay, y'all. I'm done. I'm done for right now. But if people I know, for me personally, when I see an opportunity to be a director or a stage manager, and I see that one of the requirements is to have a 4-year degree and then 2 extra years of that experience to do it, it kind of turns me off, because I'm automatically taking myself out of the game. Like, I'm just like, okay, well, I ain't got that. You know what I'm saying? So, but if there was an opportunity where a theater was to offer, hey, we're going to do 3 weeks of this, and we're going to have this person teaching this class, come on through. At the end of the class, we're going to give you a show, like what you said about, you know, the 10-minute increment show, like the shows at Sonoris Theater. And we're going to have an actual audience. We're going to have actual cast that, you know, we're going to bring on. Stuff like that really piques my interest, because I'm not trying to say nothing. I'm not trying to say I'm lazy or nothing like that. But like I said, not going back to school. And to look at that, or to see that one of the requirements is that I need a degree. I'm not doing all that work. I'm just not, because I feel like I know a little bit. I know enough about this thing to where I can, you know, navigate. But if I want to learn more, I kind of just want to get right to it. And the opportunity to sit down, like Darby said, on a Zoom call, or, you know, right now, to learn about what goes into sound design, tech, in lighting, and stage managing and directing, that would be a great opportunity. So yeah, I definitely believe that is something that could benefit a lot of people, and we would definitely see an influx of people coming in and taking advantage of that opportunity.
Okay, Rimsha, you got anything to say?
Yeah, just I completely agree with everything that's been said. Any opportunity that's going to even out the playing field for people who are interested in these experiences, I think that, like, there shouldn't be a hesitation about it.
Okay, Chris, any comments?
Yeah, I think it's almost like a miniature internship. You know, and you bring individuals in, kind of like what Patrick and Jerry had said. You know, something that can be, you know, tangible, that they can actually get started right away and have someone walk them through the process of doing that. So I know that was done for me, so that I was able to kind of do that and get my hands wet and my hands dirty. I volunteered. I, you know, put myself in spaces where I can kind of see how stuff was done, videos and stuff was done. So I think, you know, from a director's perspective, that would be a great opportunity that some people can actually take advantage of. And then too, you know, going back to what Patrick said about, you know, community outreach, you know, him being willing to even, you know, Patrick, you even being willing to do that. You know, there are so many people, you know, kids, you know, whatever, young kids or whatever, that want to be a part of theater, or want to be a part of it in some form or fashion. You know, just offering that, you know, little experience, that miniature experience, would spark them in ways, you know, we wouldn't even know of. So just having that thought to even reach out to do that, I think is massive.
Okay, now I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because, you know, I can.
Really?
And well, not to you specifically, but yeah. And I'll say this, speaking as a sound designer, this is to people out there watching. You do have to put in some time and some work. And I say that because I have volunteered to help some people. And some of you have preferred to be on the stage rather than having to sit with me at a computer. And, you know, Jerry asked for crickets that didn't croak too fast, but didn't croak too slow, and pitched a little bit lower than they normally were. And so you got to figure out how to make them pitch a little bit lower and not croak as fast as they normally croak.
The play hinged around that. The play hinged around the crickets.
See what I'm saying? So you would prefer to just be on stage. So understand, with everything that we're saying, it ain't gonna be as easy as it is to just get on the stage and recite a line. And believe me, it is I'm speaking as an actor, so I've been in both positions, and I'm just letting y'all. I'm just gonna be honest with you. When you start doing some lights, and I'm pointing to Darby, or you start doing some sound, or you start stage managing, there's a reason why they're in those positions. It is not. It ain't no crystal stair. Like
It really is.
So,
but it's not a glorified position either. It's not a glorified position either.
No, it isn't.
If you watch a real stage manager at work, they are wearing literally probably 10 hats at one time. Yeah. And they got to take care of the props, they got to take care of and they're running constantly, and there's no applause for them at the end. Yeah. So so although they're doing a lot of the grunt work, they're the first to get there, sometimes the last to leave. Those are the types of things that they do. And of course, sure, it may look good to have your name stage manager in the program, but the work is where it really comes into play. And you really have, like you said, Juan, you really have to be willing to put in the work, not just so you can have your name in the program next to, I was the stage manager, I was the director, I was the writer. I mean, that goes for director, that goes for whoever,
Exactly. And I understand, y'all. I know what this show is supposed to be about, but there again, we'll get back to it in a second. But I'm just gonna put it out there. Don't use this show as your crutch and say, well, they said on the show that so I'm just coming to try to, and then you just want to lollygag and play. No, you would not use this as your crutch, because I will call you out. No. There have been plenty of times. I think both of these are artistic. In fact, everybody that's on this thing right now has been somewhere around me when I've been acting and doing sound design, and I didn't know which brain I was supposed to use. Because I was supposed to be on the stage reciting lines, and I'm listening to some sound that didn't sound right. And the director's looking at me like, can you say your line? Oh, excuse me. So if you are these two men that we have here, these two artistic directors, sound like they are trying to commit to doing something for people and for actors in general to broaden yourself. So if you're willing to commit, then let's get with it. That's right. What this panel and this show is also about. If we're going to get with this and get rid of this racist negativity, then we got to stand. We got to act like we're going to do, well, no, not act like, we got to actually do something about this. It's not a one-way street. Artistic directors don't have to change. We got to do some changing too. So now, okay, I'm back now.
And it is, I mean, to add on to that, Juan kind of flushed y'all out, but to add on to that, it's all about being passionate about what you want to do. If you are passionate, my thing is, and this is how I was raised as well, you never go half-ass into something. If you want to do it, do it. If you want to be a plumber, be a plumber. Don't just be like, I want to fix the toilet because these are the type of toilets I want to fix. No, you got to fix every toilet, and you got to know everything that comes along with plumbing. So being passionate about the craft of entertaining, acting, sound design, stage managing, directing means that you research and you are willing to do the work. And I understand that some of you guys never experienced it. So a lot of these times you're volunteering and this is your first time. That's when you find out what you like. If you don't like it, don't do it again. That's how I maneuvered through the medical field. I knew that, okay, maybe ER isn't the best place for me. So it's all about being passionate and just knowing everything that comes along with acting, with theater, because it's not a cakewalk. The end result are those shows that are beautiful and that get the great critiques, and everybody's applauding at the end. What you don't see, what most people don't see, is the hard work that goes into that. A lot of people had to come together in order for that train to get going smoothly. Yeah, it's just about, being passionate. And Juan kind of, said about.
Look, Jamon and I be here all night.
But
Jamon, come on, let's get back. This is the last thing I got. This is the last thing I want to talk about. Okay, so theaters, after the first show, and I had mentioned that I didn't think the theater's responses were giving correctly. Some theaters came back and they gave different responses on what's going on, not the corona, what's going on with the protests and things. Do you guys think you've seen a change in theaters? I'm gonna hold you two last. You know who you two are. Darby, do you think you've seen a change in theaters?
Are we doing Raleigh theaters or are we doing
Yes,
theaters in general?
we're doing Raleigh theaters.
Okay. One of the things, to me, it sort of felt like there was, like, we all kind of came crashing to a halt. We responded, and then programming continued as normal in a way. And while programming certainly has to happen in a lot of ways, and we have to keep our theaters open, and keeping theaters open in COVID is a whole thing that none of us have figured out. I do think there's an opportunity to adjust your programming, to have a weekly Torn video chat that we live stream, to use our platforms that we have as artists in whatever art we do, to keep these conversations going past our scripted response that we all approved and we all sent out. And I don't think that we have fully succeeded in that area.
Okay. Rimsha?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Darby. I feel like, and this isn't just theaters, and this is even institutions in the triangle, where, you know, we responded in a very scripted manner. And then if we're going to say, you know, we are going to ensure that people of color are safe during X, Y, and Z, then we need to be held responsible for that. And I feel like what we might be missing for some theaters is tangible responses on how they're going to better manage conflict when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing, is that it's very, very easy to send out an email or send out a post and say, we absolutely agree, we stand in solidarity. But the difficulty comes from, well, how are we going to put that into action? Are we going to actually embody these trainings? Are we going to actually get together and have these weekly talks, which is what we're doing now, which is awesome. And so I think that's the difference.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, again, just totally agree with what has been spoken already. It's about strategy. What are we going to put into play now? Again, we're at a halt for a reason, and it's what you do in the halt determines where you go from this point forward. So if you are in the mindset of, as has been said before, just make a post and send out an email, and then of course you're going back as business as usual, obviously you're going to face some really, really difficult days ahead. But during this time, if you are strategic and if you're putting together a strategy, if you're reevaluating infrastructure and looking at how you can galvanize more individuals within your group and strengthen your infrastructure, and maybe even tear the structure down while you're in a holding pattern, because it's not like you got a show that's, bearing down on you. So you have this moment to tear stuff down, to replace stuff, to, remove things and replace stuff, and have those conversations that are necessary to put a different structure in place to help move you forward, because the landscape has changed. And there are things that are happening now that are put in place to hold you more accountable. And you would much rather be on the side of, I've done the work so I can hold myself accountable, versus having outside groups and other things taking place that are demanding you to now be held accountable for something that you should have known about prior to.
Okay. Germana, you up next. You got that phone situated. Go ahead. Turn the mic on, boo. Turn the mic on.
Okay. You can hear me? Okay. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Got it
Sorry.
myself. Do you think
we seen
that
a change.
now that the theaters have in this area, do you
Okay.
think that they, you know, since they put out the their statements that they're still doing stuff for, you know, for the
Um,
movie?
I don't know. I'm waiting to see. Honestly, it's too soon to speak. In my opinion, it's too soon to speak on it. I don't just take someone's word. In this case, those statements that were put up. I just don't take someone's word for something. I wait for the action. You have to show me that you're going to commit to change. Um, in a lot of situations, you know, you got to be careful as well, because a lot of times when we run into situations like the protests and the riots and things, it becomes a trending topic to a lot of people. It's not that they care necessarily. It's more so that this is the wave right now, so I'm gonna ride the wave. Or they don't want, you know, they want to make sure that no one comes to them and asks them, so where's your statement? We ain't heard nothing from you. So they're kind of checking off the box before anybody can shine the light on them and ask them what are they doing, and commit to the change that is needed. So in that aspect, I don't know. We will see. After Corona and everything is cleared up and people can get, you know, somewhat of a life back as far as getting socially involved with everyone. We'll see. You know, the statements have been made. They've been put out there by the theaters, and that's cool. You know, that's cute. But we'll see. I don't know. I kind of side eye a lot of it, because this shouldn't be so. I mean, yes, it does take a lot of things, and me included. It does take a lot of things. You know, it takes a hard punch sometimes to wake you up to reality and what's going on around you. But you know, a lot of this stuff is common sense. You shouldn't have been doing the things that you were doing before this happened. Kind of sort of makes me think that, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. That's how I feel about it right now. We'll see. It's not
Okay.
neither a yes or no for me. We're waiting. I'm waiting to see.
Okay, Jerry.
I agree with that for sure. I think actions speak louder than words, and it's a little bit hard to plan, not knowing when we're going to be able to congregate again and stuff. So that's one issue that I'm dealing with, and there's all these things that were booked into our space starting in mid-March. You know, other productions, our own productions, weddings, you know, just all kinds of things were booked in there that I'm now having to try to push down the road, and then the day comes and I have to push it again, and you know, so it feels like the calendar is getting you know, fuller and fuller without, and of course that's not the only way to do things, but we are talking as a board about some collaborations with the African American community that would be long term, you know, that would have not just be a one-off thing, but something that could feel consistent and maybe help to grow some of those technical positions, perhaps, that we've been talking about. So we'll, you know, it's all gonna depend on when we can reopen again and stuff, as to whether that can work. But certainly this is being thought about and planned right now. You know, the plans are tenuous because of the coronavirus, but it is in the works.
Okay, Patrick.
How long do we have? I'm just kidding. I do think that change is coming. I don't think anybody made a statement for show. I can understand why it would be believed to be that way. I honestly can. I think that there's like I kind of want to answer this. Like, I'm going to get really real, which is like I'm usually pretty introverted and quiet and shy. So this is kind of new for me, but it's just the truth. And I think that we need the truth right now, you know? And I just want to say, like, you know, I'm about to say like some things that are super complicated and some of the challenges that we're all working with in the theater right now. But I want to say those things, but I want to say them, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to compare the grief or the challenges that we're going through with anything that the Black community is going through right now. But like, I think the thing that like, and I said kind of earlier, that I think once it gets really personal, it happens to our friends, the people that we care about, those of you who've been on our stages, who have agreed to do readings, who've done like all this stuff, like that's part of the personal, but then there's also like the personal that is just our own personhood. And I've been like, man, since, you know, we don't know, like there's so many things like I think we want to, well, I know we want to do better and to be better and to put anti-racist policies and practice into our organization. We want to do it. We're also fighting to stay open. Like there's a real chance that like a lot of theaters aren't going to make it through that. You know what I mean? Like there is that chance. And that's something that I carry every day with me, is like, how do I make it? The day, you know, the first statement that we made, I wrote the first statement that we made, that I understand now, like looking back, looked like a marketing more than what I intended it to be, which was a reminder to audiences who saw this show that we did, that you made a promise that you were going to do different. You made a promise that you weren't going to be complicit in this stuff anymore. And so, but it didn't come across that way. And this is not an excuse, but just to kind of paint the picture of that day, I also spent that day making phone calls to people that I love dearly to tell them they didn't have a job anymore. You know, and so like, there's so many challenges that are happening right now, but the silver lining of that is, if we got to rebuild it, we can rebuild it differently. We can do this differently. I don't know how long it's going to take, because I want to do it. I want to be real about it. I know there's some stuff we can implement immediately, and we will. But I want it to be real and true and lasting and sustainable, and really change who we are. But then there's this personal part of it too for me, where like, you know, everything that happened with George Floyd and all of that, like I had a pretty immediate desire to say something. I don't ever do social media, like as a person, like that's just not my venue. I'm way more like person to person, like in my activism and advocacy. But I wanted to say something on social media, both as an organization and as a person. It was so important to me. And then, like, I also, like, I just felt all this shame too, because like people that look like me are in cages right now, ripped away from their families. And I said nothing. And so a part of what I'm personally going through right now too is just realizing what an assimilationist I've been. Part of, I think, of me getting to where I've gotten to is letting people erase my identity a little bit, because it moved me, you know what I mean? Like, and I didn't realize I was doing it. It wasn't a conscious thing. But I've played into the systems that are oppressive and like that are hurting people, without even knowing it. And like to be like the first artistic leader of color at Raleigh Little Theater, I've spent the last 5 years like thinking we were making all this progress, like we were doing better. And I think we've done some great things. We have made progress. We've done good things, but then like also to realize that like we were also reinforcing some systems that were racist, right? Like, you know, as I'm learning more about what anti-racism is, I'm realizing like in all the efforts I thought that I'm making that were good, I probably have caused some hurt. So So fixing that and turning it around is also a process, to be totally honest. And again, I'm not asking for sympathy, and I'm not saying my situation's worse than anybody's or different than anybody's really. But there is, for artistic leaders who like we also care deeply about the art form and people that work for us, the most of us do. There is a process also of ripping ourselves open to realize what we've done wrong and then get on the long journey to fix it. And I know that hearing that it might be long is probably maddening and frustrating, but we also don't want things that are performative and not sincere, you know? So for me, it's wrapped up in like some personal shame and just like a need to do better as a person of color, you know, as a leader of color, and wanting to do authentic things for the community. Wow, that was really long and big, but I don't know.
That was great, Patrick.
That's what I've been feeling for these last month. Yeah.
That was great. That was
good.
You needed to get that out, and
Yeah, I have. Thank you for letting me have that space.
yeah, we definitely needed to hear that. That was a Shonda. I know you're looking at that. That was Aya. You looking at that? That was the word right there. That was it.
Not scripture.
Wow. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try to play this, and I'm hoping that we can hear it. This is what we're gonna end on, and we're gonna end on this if we can hear it, because it doesn't give us a solution. And Patrick, you were saying it taking a long time and talking about us having the patience. As I said, it's been over 400 years. We ain't got nothing but patience. So I thank you guys.
And just to say this, Patrick, and to everyone else, when I spoke about that, I'm very serious about what I said, but I'm not, you know, criticizing no one. But you, like you said, Patrick, I know you understand that, you know, my skepticism as far as when Juan asked the question, are theaters, have I seen change? I've lost that confidence in most institutions.
Absolutely, yeah, and then be critical.
Lost the confidence. I just I believe that there are good, genuine people. I've met them. I know them. I know that. I'm not dumb or, you know, absent-minded to that, but it's just, I'm so tired, and I've just lost. I just need reassuring.
Yeah.
That there is, you know, someone who's not my color that cares, and you've shown that most definitely. Ever since I stepped on stage the first time at Raleigh Little Theater, I always felt welcome, and I always felt that it was very diverse. But it's just that, you know, I just lost the confidence. And,
I totally get that, and I don't want anybody to hear me saying don't criticize. Like I said it on the first tour, and like in the comments, I was like, yeah, call us out. Like that's the only way we're gonna know to get, you know. Right. It's not the only way we're gonna know to get better, but it is a way, and so that's okay. I appreciate you, Germano.
And Juan, this is a great, Juan and Lauren, this is a great forum. This is a great way to, you know, like call have the conversation, call people out, and this is a start. So I
yes, it
definitely,
is.
I definitely appreciate you and Lauren for doing this.
Well, thank you. So we're going to make an attempt to look at this and hopefully hear this. If not, you read the words. But I want to say thank you guys again for being up here. I hope that this makes you feel more comfortable with talking in your different theater groups as you go into your theater group. People watching, I hope it makes you feel more comfortable, gives you the strength to say what you need to say in theater. Artistic directors, I hope it makes you pay more attention to your actors, to your crew. Let's keep this thing going. Let's keep this dialogue going. Let's watch this. Let's see if this works. Turn it up. Uh-oh. Please move the window away from me. And it doesn't.
Suspicious activity, man.
Hold on. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
What are you guys doing? I want to investigating suspicious activity, sir. I'm not doing it. I've been around him, but I haven't been doing nothing. So what were you doing over there at the wall? Waiting for the rest of you. Call my sister right now. You have a cell phone caller. Call her. Call my sister in Florida. Don't do this. What are you doing? Oh my God! What are you doing? Hands behind your back. Don't put your hands. What are you doing? Oh God! Oh please! Put your hands. Oh my God! Oh my God! Stop! Oh my God! 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 Oh Jesus! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh God! This was the other guy. Like I was born over there. Huh? None different people. Because they pointed this guy out to me. Okay, so no. Yeah. Drunk? Yeah. Good? Yeah. We got an ambulance coming, good? You don't want to talk to the ambulance? Oh my God.
So this is where we are. Thanks, guys. And this is what we have to stop. You guys have a good night.